Okay, so we will let us finish a little of what has been left in module 4. Some minor things are left. So let's try to finish those things, and that will bring us almost to the end of this course. So in module 4, we already spoke about most of the ethical and other things. Let's go to the next reading, which is about privacy and cyber security, which are correlated to each other. You need to make your ecosystem secure so that there is no theft of data, etc., so that privacy is maintained. So what privacy would literally mean is, privacy of course means that whatever data that you have provided to an organization, that is privately held by that organization, and the other people should not have access to that data. Okay, so that actually means privacy, and it also helps you to protect your data so that it doesn't become public and everybody knows about it. And about cyber security, cybersecurity, on the other hand, means that the organizations that have taken your private data, they have to put in control so that there is no unauthorized access to that data. So they have to put in enough control so that your data is kept safe, and things like ransomware or data theft and those kinds of things are avoided. Because if these kinds of things happen, then it will not just put these companies at stake of getting into regulatory fines and legal issues, but it will also make you more vulnerable, because your data can go to wrong hands, and then people can be blackmailed or based on what kind of data is stolen. So all of those things are there. So actually, if we look at privacy from the ethical standpoint, let's say it's from an ethical standpoint, privacy, not giving privacy to the individuals is wrong, and it can harm people, it may not harm people. So we should not always look at privacy and the harm it can bring to those individuals. Even if it is not bringing any harm to those individuals, it is still wrong. So the example which I had read in GARP was that there are times when spouses cheat. So sometimes they can get caught and sometimes they do not get caught. If they get caught, then it can bring some harm to them, harm in terms of their societal status. They can get also into some kind of a legal troubles and more issues. But even if they are not caught, it is still a wrong thing to do. So that's how GARP explains that it is not always correct that not abiding to privacy will bring you some kind of a tangible harm, but it is always wrong to not abide to privacy. And as I had said earlier, that if your data goes into wrong hands, there can be discrimination because they have your private data. There can be blackmail, there can be exposure of your information to the outside world, there can be public shaming, etc. So, and people can also influence your decisions, and your autonomy can also become compromised. And there is also a saying that if for an organization, if they collect more personal data, they will have more risk, because they'll have to put in more controls in place to make sure that the data is safe. So it is always better to keep the collection of personal data to bare minimum. Okay, now there are some principles, there are some basic principles, ethical principles with respect to privacy, and I'll just briefly talk about them. So the first principle talks about it talks about the right of privacy, which is a basic principle that every individual that you go to for collecting their personal information, they have the right to right to know where the data is used, for what purpose the data is used, and they can withdraw that data at any point of time in their life, etc., etc. There is another principle which is called as data minimization, and this is very important, and it says that if you, first of all, you should not collect PII, personally identifiable information. Even if you do the bare minimum collection of information. So if you it is very easy to say that, okay, let me collect everything and anything, but if you look at your requirements and go bare minimum. So if you don't need, say, age of an individual or the sexual orientation of an individual, etc., etc., don't collect that. You only collect probably his financial details if you are talking about, say, some kind of a credit assessment, etc. So make your PII data collection to bare minimum. So that's the second principle. The third one is called the right to be forgotten. So when you are done with your work or whatever analysis you want to perform, so whenever you are done with all of that, you don't have to keep the data with you forever and always, and the people or the subjects or the customers that for with whom you have collected this information, they have the right to be forgotten. They can say that I want the data to be deleted, I want my digital footprint of my data to get deleted, so that so that there is no history of data in your organization. Then you also want to give the control of this data to the individuals, which means that they can withdraw the consent anytime, even during the execution of the project, that I'm not okay with you, I'm not okay anymore with you taking use of this data or whatever. So the end users will always have the control of the data. It's not that even if you have paid them and collected some data, and even if you have taken some kind of an authorization, that doesn't make you authorized for the entire lifetime of their data. They can withdraw the consent anytime. Then there is something called as contextual integrity, which means that if your collection has happened for some particular context, say C1, you cannot use the same data for some another context C2. So what this means is, let's suppose I have collected some personal data to check how good or bad the effectiveness of, say, COVID vaccine has been with respect to their health right now, or if there are any kind of consequences by taking those shots or those vaccines. And if tomorrow the government wants to use the same data for looking at some other kind of an analytics, like how many people were given the shots in which location, or if they want to look at, or maybe they want to marry this data with say election voting data, etc., etc., all of that is not right. So you collect the data for a particular context and you remain in that context itself. Don't expand the context without talking to your customers and asking them if they are okay for their data to be used for a different context. Then there is the principle of data deletion, that once you are done with your process, you need to delete that data, permanently delete that data from, and delete all the traces of that data so that it's no longer available to anybody else. And then there is the principle of data security, which is very, very important. We cannot talk about this in a sentence or two. It's a topic in itself. We can talk about data security the entire day, but this means that you need to make sure there are encryption algorithms. Everything is done to make sure that when you store your data, that data does not go to, it cannot get Anybody outside of your organization should not have that access, or anybody who doesn't have the key of encryption should not be able to access their data. So that's those are the principles of your data privacy. The next topic is about governance, and again this is ethical governance, and I'll say governance challenges. So while we are talking about all these ethical issues and things, and we want all these organizations to put in some kind of a framework for governing these ethical things, but it is easier said than done, and there can be a lot of problems that can come up, or it is very, very challenging to have the governance mechanism set in any organization. So let's talk about these challenges one by one. The first one being it's called the power asymmetry. So what this means is that there are I don't want to give the names of the companies. It is very, very evident, but there are a group of say 5-6 AI firms that control most of your data. Okay, and these firms have become more powerful than some of your local governments. When I say local governments, or I'll say national governments of a lot of countries, more powerful in terms of wealth, in terms of influence also. So when it comes to writing laws or regulations, these companies have become very, very powerful. So there is a power asymmetry, which is kind of influencing some of these regulations that are coming up. The second is the institutional opaqueness. So everything that happens inside an institute is not transparent. There can be multiple reasons for them to be opaque, because if they kind of show or display their secret sauce, whether it is their business model or whether it is their AI model or anything else, their competitive edge can become compromised. Everybody can copy the same thing. So there is institutional opaqueness, which is kind of a challenge, because your regulators or auditors, etc., will not be able to know how a particular institute is operating inside their organization, and hence they will not be able to tell whether whatever they are doing is ethically, morally correct or not. The second one is algorithmic opaqueness. So what happens, especially some of these proprietary LLMs, there are open source LLMs which are still available for experts to audit and see what is happening, but then there are some kind of proprietary algorithms or proprietary LLMs, as I was talking about, which are black box. And if there are black box, then those algorithms are opaque. There is another problem as well, that a lot of times in AI, ML, and a lot of analytics, we take some proxy variables, and there is a lot of debate about whether those proxy variables should be taken or not taken. For example, sometimes if you want to look at the quality of newspaper articles, somebody say that I'll do the word count. A longer article will be more in-depth and better, but that may not always be true. Similarly, if you are looking at analyzing the CVs of people for a particular job, you may want to look at the number of years of experience, which again may not be the right parameter. So there is a lot of proxy variables that most of the algorithms take, not just the new neural network ones, but the old style machine learning kinds of algorithms too. So that's the reason that all of these can create some kind of an algorithmic opaqueness, which is ethically difficult to govern. Then the next is the lack of AI ethical committees. So since this field is still evolving, and we have not well established the field of AI ethics. We are still evolving, unlike medical ethics. So what happens in case of medical ethics, which has been in practice for a very, very long time? There are courses like, say, bioethics, or there are ethical codes, or there are things like ethical committees in your hospitals. So every doctor needs to take a course on bioethics before he can practice. So there are well established rules, there are well established code of conduct and SOPs which every doctor has to go through. But in today's age or today's world, you can become a ML engineer or an AI scientist without doing a course on, say, AI ethics, because it is still evolving. So that's the lack of ethical committees or ethical guidelines or ethical structure, I would say, which is universally acceptable. Okay, so that's another problem. The another is the lack of international, I would say, international consensus or international regulations. Okay, so for example, there are international regulations on, say, use of nuclear power. Okay, the entire world understand that this is what needs to be done. It needs to be used for, say, good things like for energy, etc., but not so good thing to use for weapons. At least that's how we claim. And there are international regulations on how even the data and privacy needs to be taken care of. But still, we are still far from how the AI would be allowed or not allowed. Okay, especially in regulated industries like healthcare, financial services, insurance, etc., etc. So there are no international regulations. The regulations are coming up as we speak. China is the only country right now which has well established legal laws on the use of AI. Europe is also almost there. I think from 1st of August 2025 the AI Act is in practice, but still it is too early for us to know how well that those rules or that laws will be applicable. And US has still state to state rules, and there are some executive orders that were signed, but and the rest of the world is still learning. So those are the problems with the ethical part of the lack of international regulations. Then what else? Then there is a problem with respect to, say, unpredictability. So most of the algorithms, especially the large ones, are non-deterministic, which means that if you go to your GPT today and ask some question Q, you get an answer A. But if you ask the same question Q tomorrow, you may get some other answer. So there is a lot of randomness, or there is a variation, or there is some kind of a volatility in the answers that you get at different points of time, at different parts of the world, at different user contexts, etc., etc. So because of this unpredictability, there are problems with respect to making there are problems with respect to understanding if what you are getting is right or wrong, which is the another challenge which Garp has said separately, is lack of I would say validation of whole truth. So every provider of large language model will say that there is a possibility that your LLM can hallucinate and etc. And when you implement your LLM for a very large volume, there is actually no fixed mechanism to check if whatever is responded has the whole truth or not. Sometimes it can be partially true, sometimes it can be false as well. So how do we find out if the response from the large language model is validated? Does it talk about the whole truth or partial truth, etc. And then last but not the least, one of the other governance challenges about privacy and copyright. So I think I spoke about this example earlier also, that a couple of months back people were trying to get their pictures modified for some kind of a sketch on this Gilby art. And this person in Japan, who actually was the inventor of this kind of a sketch, he was very, very disappointed. He said that he has given his entire life to create those kinds of caricatures or sketches, and now AI has all of a sudden democratized it so much that it is accessible and available to everybody in the world. So the artistic revenue or the artistic rights are getting compromised. And the same is true for the copyright things also, that a lot of code that was written by people on GitHub and other places is used to train, and the same code is used to generate some new code, right? So is there some kind of a privacy, or do we need to give enough at least we need to honor the people from where the training has been done, whether it is for visual, whether it is for code, whether it is for music or anything else. So how do we make sure that the credits are given to the right people? As of today, there is nothing like that, but that's also one of the governance challenges with respect to privacy and copyright and those kinds of things. Okay, so that was about the challenges, or that was about the governance issues or governance challenges that we face, at least right now in 2025 when I'm making this video. And the last very, very small section is about the regulatory landscape. And I know that this can change. So if you are listening to this sometimes in 2026, 2027, etc., all of this may become obsolete. But as of now, in the beginning of 25 or so, there are regulatory laws in Europe, in US, in China. China, it's almost very well established. In the Europe, the laws or the regulations with respect to data, like the GDPR, or there are laws around DSA and DMA and all of those things are still established. But then your EU AI Act is getting firm as we speak. So probably by the end of this year or early next year, we will come to know the real challenges from the implementation, or from the enterprises that are using the AI, the consumers of AI and the providers of AI, how whole of those people come together to firm up this, so that it should not become too hard to implement, and it should not become bad on the customers, that their data is compromised or things like that. On the US, as we know that US, there are some executive orders that were signed, and different states have different laws. Your GARP reading will give you some kind of a brief overview of what kind of things are okay to be done in California versus New York versus somewhere south of the US. So have a look at it, read it, whatever is useful at that point of time when you are giving this exam. So I'll not get into the details. And before I close this, I just especially with respect to this regulatory landscape, I just wanted to give you a brief idea that ethics influence laws, but they are not analogous to each other. I would say laws means that this is the bare minimum. okay, and ethics is more of your more of your ideal moral behavior. Okay, so this is going to be much more than this one. So laws will tell you that this is what needs to be done, but if you want to become a more ethical company, this is just the start point. You can come to this side and become a more ethical company, but by not just doing the bare minimum, but making sure that the ethics are preserved, or it is done in the true spirit, rather than just making sure that you are covering from the regulatory landscape itself. So that brings us to the end of module 4. I'll do a brief video on module 5, and that's it. Thank you.